Hey everyone, and welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network. I'm Alyssa Ash. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to be giving you guys a recap of the Twitter and Facebook Senate hearing that happened today, earlier this morning, and now it actually is still happening that Jack Dorsey is testifying against the House Energy and Commerce Committee. And now I know many of you are also watching the Kavanaugh hearing. Thank you so much for tuning in to that. Please stay tuned for that. We are, kind of streaming both right now. So I was hoping you guys could maybe watch both at the same time or take a little break from that and hop on over here. So thank you so much for joining. Appreciate each and every single one of you that have been waiting in the chat room. Our moderators that are here, Barbara Braley, thank you so much for being here. And also our members are here as well. JC is here. And also wanted to give a shout out to those website moderators, Common Sense, Gleno, and Reculp. Thank you so much for all you do and just for keeping the chat room friendly on the website as well. Appreciate each and every single one of you. And shout out to everyone watching on Facebook as well. I'm going to shout out some names real quick. Dawn Bowles is here, Deborah Lynn Killen, Lisa Gardner, Ann Caddo, Leah Kilbreth, John Popoff, Wade Rose, and George Osborne, and Marlon Eisenberg. Thank you guys so much for being here. And Jordan Scott over here in the YouTube chat room. Now remember, as I'm going through what happened today, would love your feedback as well. If there's any more information about these Senate hearings, anything that I may have missed, please send it to me on Twitter at AlyssaRSBN. There's my Twitter handle, and would love to interact with you guys that way. So I have a few videos I'll be showing you guys of their testimonies, but first kind of just going to get into some information from Reuters. So we're going to back it up a little. This was actually posted yesterday. So top Twitter Inc. and Facebook Inc. executives will defend their companies before U.S. lawmakers on Wednesday, with Facebook insisting it takes election interference seriously and Twitter denying its operations are influenced by politics. But no executive from Alphabet Inc.'s Google is expected to testify, and no executive did show up from Google after the company declined the Senate Intelligence Committee's request to send one of its most senior executives, frustrating lawmakers. So Facebook Chief Operating Officer Sheryl Sandberg, appearing alongside Twitter Chief Executive Jack Dorsey, will say her company's efforts to combat foreign influence efforts have actually improved since the 2016 U.S. election, according to a written testimony which was released on Tuesday. And she said in that testimony, "The actions we've taken in response show our determination to everything we can to stop this kind of interference from happening." Now, the company is getting better at finding and removing inauthentic content and now has more than 20,000 people working on safety and security, she said. So technology executives have repeatedly testified in Congress over the past year on the defensive over political influence activity on their sites, as well as concerns over user privacy. So the Senate Intelligence Committee has been looking into efforts to influence U.S. public opinion for more than a year after U.S. intelligence agencies concluded that Kremlin-backed entities sought to boost Republican President Donald Trump's chances of winning the White House in 2016. Now, Moscow has denied involvement, and Google offered to send its chief legal officer, Kent Walker, to Wednesday's hearing, but he was rejected by the committee, which said it wanted to hear from corporate decision makers. So Senator Richard Burr, the committee's Republican chairman, said he expected the hearing would focus on solutions to the problem of foreign efforts to influence U.S. elections and sow political discord with the jab at Google. And Burr told reporters at the Senate, "You don't understand the problem if you don't see this as a large effort from the whole of government and the private sector." So he told this to reporters at the Senate. And Google said Walker would be in Washington on Wednesday and be available to meet with lawmakers. On Tuesday, it released written testimony describing the company's efforts to combat influence operations. And Twitter's Dorsey will also testify at a House of Representatives hearing on Wednesday that the company does not use political ideology to make any decisions. Now, this is according to written testimony that was also made public on Tuesday. So Dorsey will appear before the House Energy and Commerce Committee, addressing Republican concerns about how the social media platform policies content. And Dorsey said, from a simple business perspective and to serve the public conversation, Twitter is incentivized to keep all voices on the platform. Now, conservative Republicans in Congress have criticized social media companies for what they say are politically motivated practices in removing some content, a charge the companies have repeatedly rejected. And President Trump faulted Twitter back on July 26 without citing any evidence and he actually faulted them for limiting the visibility of prominent Republicans through a practice known as shadow banning, which I know many of you are familiar with. So Democratic Representative David Cicilline blasted Wednesday's hearing and his Republican colleagues, calling claims of political bias baseless. He said there's no evidence that the algorithms of social networks or search results are based against conservatives. It is a made-up narrative pushed by the conservative propaganda machine to convince voters of a conspiracy that does not exist. And moving on to today, more information from Reuters. So this is kind of an update. The Department of Justice looks into social media firms over free speech. So the Justice Department said on Wednesday it has convened a meeting with state attorneys generals to discuss concerns that social media platforms were intentionally stifling the free exchange of ideas. So spokesman Devin O'Malley said the Attorney General had convened the meeting this month to discuss a growing concern that these companies may be hurting their competition and intentionally stifling the free exchange of ideas on their platforms. So the statement did not name Facebook and Twitter, but the companies have been criticized for what some see as an effort to exclude conservative voices. And in a hearing on Wednesday, Representative Greg Walden, chairman of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, said Twitter had made mistakes that he said minimized Republicans' presence on the social media site. And he said multiple members of Congress and the chairwoman of the Republican Party have seen their Twitter presences temporarily minimized in recent months due to what you have claimed was a mistake in the algorithm. So Representative Frank Pallone, the top Democrat on the committee, said he was worried that the Republicans were motivated by political concerns. He said over the past weeks, President Trump and many Republicans have peddled conspiracy theories about Twitter and other social media platforms to whip up their base and fundraise. Now, however, like Walden, Pallone acknowledged that Twitter's ability to spread information quickly has a dark side and said it and other social media companies must do more to regain and maintain public trust. Now, also, it looks like Catherine Stinson commented some of those conservative voices that have been censored. She said Alex Jones, Coffee with Dave, Colin Flaherty, and so many more. Thank you, Catherine, for commenting those. So Twitter chief executive Jack Dorsey said in his opening statement that Twitter took no political positions. He said, "We don't consider political viewpoints, perspectives, or party affiliation in any of our policies or enforcement decisions, period. Impartiality is our guiding principle." So President Donald Trump, without offering evidence, accused social media companies themselves of interfering in the upcoming U.S. midterm elections, telling the Daily Caller that social media firms are super liberal. And President Trump told the conservative outlet in an interview conducted on Tuesday that I think they already have interfered in the November 6th election. And the report gave no other details. So Justice Department spokesman O'Malley said the department had monitored a hearing of a Senate Intelligence Committee on Wednesday where Facebook and Twitter executives defended their companies before skeptical lawmakers. Now, many members of Congress fault social media platforms for failing to combat foreign efforts to influence U.S. politics. And also, I wanted to take a quick minute to share with you guys that may not be familiar with RSBN a little bit about who we are and what we do. So we are an online news network. Now, we do lean conservative, but we try to be non-biased to bring you guys both sides of the story. We bring broadcasts to you guys just like this, and Senate hearings, and, you know, as you can see, Kavanaugh's confirmation hearings right now, and breaking news and my nightly news recaps. You'll get to see that tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, so please stay tuned for that. And also, we are privileged and honored to actually travel to political rallies all around the country. We go to President Trump's MAGA rallies, his Make America Great Again rallies, and they are so much fun. It's such an honor that we're able to go. Right Side Broadcasting Network is really known for just getting down in the middle of the crowd, getting to know the people, hearing their stories, asking where they came from, why it is important to them, you know, what issues matter to them. And also, we pan the crowds. It's so important that we get to pan the crowd because the mainstream media stations simply don't do it. So we pan the crowd. We show you guys the thousands of people that are there, and it's such a joy and honor that we are able to do that. Now, as you can imagine, going to these rallies are very expensive. It's at least $5,000 each time to go, and we can't do it without your help. So, you know, the cost, a lot of people ask, okay, $5,000, what does that mean? So breaking it down, just travel is expensive. Those rental cars, airplane tickets, gas, you know, our lodging. Now, we do try to get Airbnbs so that it is cheaper than a hotel room, and it's still expensive. We have a couple $100s that we have to pay for that live view unit just to be up that day. Every time we simply turn it on, it's expensive, a couple $100s. So the different ways that you can donate, that you can actually help us get there. One way is right here on the YouTube chat all you have to do if you are watching from a computer is click that super chat button in the bottom left hand corner. I believe on a phone it might be in the bottom right corner. So that is the super chat button. It is the $ in the chat box. And it's really fun because when you actually donate on YouTube, your donation comes up in a bright color, and I'm able to share it with the world, of course, as long as it is appropriate. And that is a really fun way to donate. Now on YouTube, we do get to keep 70% of your donation, whereas if you pay on PayPal, we get to keep 90%. So that's a little bit better of a way to donate. And I'm going to show you all those different links to donate through our website. So switching over right now, all you have to do is go to rsbnetwork.com. And it is the 4th tab over. You just click donate. So you can see the different links here. The first one is through PayPal or a credit card, so you can click that link and enter the amount right there, your debit or credit card information, your billing address, and your contact information. And of course, if you're not ready to donate yet, you can always save this info for a later time. So another way you can donate is with a monthly donation. You can actually become a patron if you feel a little more invested in RSBN. You really like what you're seeing and you want to make sure we stay on the air. You can become a patron. So it's really fun to do it this way as well. And thank you, Barbara Brayley, one of our great moderators, for commenting those links, because you get fun things in return like hats, pens and pencils, stickers, mugs, and just different things to remember us and to wear us, and remember to share us with your friends. So all you have to do is click Become a Patron on that right-hand side. And if you're getting to it separately from our website, that's totally fine too. All you have to do is go to patreon.com/RSBN, and that is Patreon with an E, you can see right here. So it goes from entry level, bronze level, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, double diamond, and all access if you are actually giving $500 or more a month. And you can also do a custom pledge, which is just where you donate to RSBN without selecting a reward. So really fun way to donate. You'll have special privileges. There's different rewards for each level. And backing it up a little bit, that last way to donate, if you're not comfortable donating online, that's okay. We completely understand and respect that. And you can actually send a check directly to us. You just write it out to RSBN, and then it is 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344 in Auburn, Alabama 36830. So that's how you're able to donate through the mail. Now, it is an honor. A couple times every month I actually get to go through these handwritten letters and just the checks with Joe, and I really love seeing the letters because they come from your heart, and that is so special to me. So super thankful to everyone that donates that way as well. Wow, over on YouTube, thank you so much. We just got a $100 donation from Nate Skate. Really appreciate you. Thank you so much, Nate, for being a regular donor. And he said, thank you, RSBN. Donation for RSBN Rally Travel Fund and MAGA. Wow. Thank you, Nate. Really appreciate you and all of your support. I am going to tell Joe about that. He will be so excited. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Wow. Like you said, donation for RSBN Rally Travel Fund. So the team is on their way right now to Billings, Montana, and it is going to be such a blast for them going to Billings, Montana. I know that they are so excited. So make sure to tune in tonight for their pre-rally stream. It's going to be a lot of fun. That'll be right after my nightly news recap. And thank you, Barbara Braley, for commenting. Get the latest, greatest RSBN swag, t-shirts, hoodies, and mugs. Thank you, Barbara Braley. And thank you, British Patriot, who says, I wish them all a safe journey. Yes, me too. Thank you, British Patriot. Really appreciate you. And right now, I am pulling up some more information for you guys, some live updates. Okay, so this is from the New York Times, actually. So Twitter's Jack Dorsey faces a more political House hearing. Jack Dorsey, Twitter's chief executive, is testifying before the House Energy and Commerce Committee on the moderation of online content. The hearing has taken a more political tone than a Senate hearing earlier in the day. And Sheryl Sandberg, Facebook's chief operating officer, and Mr. Dorsey testified at the Senate hearing about their company's response to foreign interference in elections and the moderation of online content. So Larry Page, the chief executive of Google's parent company, Alphabet, was also invited to the Senate hearing, but the company declined to send him. And several senators noted that no one from Google was there. So the House hearing can be watched live on the Senate Intelligence Committee website, C-SPAN, and the House Energy and Committee website. So the House hearing took a more political tone. The House hearing kicked off with a more political tone than the Senate hearing earlier with social media executives. So Jack Dorsey, Twitter's chief executive officer, was asked by Representative Greg Walden of Oregon, the Republican chairman on the committee, how algorithms could be suppressing conservative views on the service. So it was a stark change from the morning hearing when Senate Intelligence Committee members were more collegial and appeared to share similar concerns with Facebook and Twitter over disinformation and foreign influence on their site. And the top Democrat in the House hearing, Representative Frank Pallone of New Jersey, accused his Republican counterparts on the committee of having political motives behind their accusations. And Mr. Pallone said President Trump and many Republicans have peddled conspiracy theories about Twitter and other social media platforms to whip up their base and fundraise. And he said, I fear Republicans are using this hearing for those purposes instead of addressing the serious issues by social media platforms that affect Americans' everyday lives. And Representative Joe Barton, a Republican of Texas, said we wouldn't be having this discussion if there wasn't a general agreement that your company had discriminated against conservatives. And Mr. Dorsey, who read opening remarks from a phone while live tweeting, said the company has found no evidence of political bias. And he said, looking at the data, we analyzed tweets sent by all members of the House and Senate and found no statistically significant difference between the number of times a tweet by a Democrat is viewed versus a Republican, even after our ranking and filtering of tweets has been applied. And Representative Mike Doyle, a Democrat of Pennsylvania, accused Representative Kevin McCarthy, the majority leader, of sounding the alarm of anti-conservative bias for political gains. And he described those accusations as a load of crap. So also want to go through some terms that were used in this hearing. If you happen to watch it, I'm sorry we did not live stream it because we were streaming and still are the Kavanaugh hearing. But going to share with you guys some different terms. So shadow banning is a moderation tactic for online discussions that hides an individual's comments from other issues involved in the conversation without letting the person know that their comments are hidden. And the practice is intended to limit the impact of trolls and abusers without instigating them to create fresh accounts to continue their behavior. And yes, British Patriot, Alex Jones and Marco Rubio did have a spat in the hearing room hallway, which I will get to soon, don't worry. So conservative Twitter users have recently rallied around claims that Twitter shadow bans users based on their politics. Now, in July, President Trump tweeted that he would look into the discriminatory and illegal practice. However, Twitter says it does not shadow ban users. Twitter's algorithmic timeline ranks tweets based on a number of factors, causing some tweets to appear higher in the timeline than others. So another term is signal. Now, Twitter ranks tweets based on what the company calls signals. Signals include a user's actions on Twitter, as well as actions that other accounts make when interacting with a user's account. And signals are often specific to a particular user's account. For instance, if you follow a certain celebrity or politician, their tweets might appear higher in a search than tweets from other users. So Twitter also considers signals of authenticity, such as whether a user has verified his phone number or email address when ranking tweets. And if a user is blocked or muted by a large number of accounts, their tweets might appear lower in a search or in the Twitter timeline. Now, a bot. I know many of you are familiar with this. So a Twitter bot is an automated account that publishes tweets without human intervention. And some bots publish useful information like automated earthquake alerts. But bots are also used in harassment and misinformation campaigns to amplify certain messages over the voices of human users. So another term is downranking. So downranking is the practice of displaying particular tweets or users lower in timeline and search. And when Twitter introduced its service, it displayed all tweets in chronological order. And as the service grew, Twitter switched to timeline ordered by an algorithm. Now, in the new timeline, Twitter actually attempts to rank tweets based on quality and relevance. And tweets that Twitter's algorithm flags as low quality are downranked. Twitter also sometimes hides tweets behind a warning that tells the user that the content could be abusive or offensive. Now, conservative personalities were there at the hearing today. So nearly an hour before the committee was set to start, the conservative personalities Alex Jones, Laura Loomer, and Charles C. Johnson gathered with an entourage of cameras to heckle members of the news media and House committee members. And they have been very critical of Twitter's policies just because of what they have had to deal with. So last month, Twitter announced it would ban Alex Jones for 7 days for violating its terms of service, and he has faced a suspension from Facebook as well, and Apple removed some of his podcasts for violating their terms of service. And today, Mr. Jones told journalists he was there to face his accusers. So the executives were also pressed on opioid ads. So Senator Joe Manchin III, Democrat of West Virginia, asked the executives about their responsibilities to control harmful behavior on their platforms. And he noted that the illegal sale of opioids on their platforms still exists. He asked if the companies felt they should bear some responsibility for the deaths related to opioid sales on their platform. Now, neither Mr. Dorsey nor Ms. Sandberg answered that question directly, and they stressed the importance of laws that protect internet platforms from lawsuits. So the executives said they could be open to further reforms to a law that provides a safe harbor from liability to internet companies, Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. Now, this law, passed in 1996, is considered the holy grail of internet policy, providing broad protections that are credited with the rapid growth of Silicon Valley. But they said the protection also allows them greater freedom to police bad behavior without fear of legal actions. And Mr. Dorsey said, "We benefit from a lot of the protections it gives." So the safe harbor of 230 has been very important in enabling companies like ours to do proactive enforcement without increasing our liability, Mrs. Sandberg said. So we would like to work very closely on how this is enacted. And then moving on to, how do you tell users something is fake? So lawmakers pressed the two executives on how their platforms notify users of foreign influence campaigns. Ms. Sandberg said Facebook is getting better of letting users know of fake accounts and ads. And she raised the example of an event in Washington, D.C. that was promoted by an inauthentic account. Now, when Facebook detected the account, the company took down the event and notified users who indicated their interest in attending. And Senators Susan Collins, Republican of Maine, criticized Twitter for Russian activity that affected her account, but that was only brought to her attention by researchers from Clemson University. So Mr. Dorsey admitted that Twitter needed to improve its process of detecting fake accounts and notifying users, and said the company wants to work more with academics. And Mr. Dorsey said, "We do believe in transparency in a big part of where we need the most work." So senators were also hinting at regulation. They said regulation is coming. Senators made that clear in their statements to Ms. Sandberg and Mr. Dorsey, but the precise form of that legislation is unclear. So Senator Mark Warner, a Democrat of Virginia, said Congress is going to have to take action here. The era of the Wild West in social media is coming to an end, and several lawmakers indicated that they saw an opening for regulation related to election interference on social media platforms because they considered it a threat to national security. And other senators appeared to favor a privacy approach focusing on individual rights to control personal data. So data privacy, said Senator Ron Wyden, a Democrat from Oregon, would serve as the foundation of legislation that he's previously discussed with Twitter and Facebook. So social media companies are resigned to the notion that regulation is on its way, and Twitter and Facebook have endorsed the Honest Ads Act, a proposal that would require more transparency about who is paying for online ads, and have begun building so-called ad transparency centers on their platforms. But expect some resistance from tech giants. In a white paper, Mr. Warner proposed 20 legislative possibilities, and when pressed on one of the proposals, Ms. Sandberg replied, "We don't think it's a question of whether regulation, we think it's a question of the right regulation." And Senator Marco Rubio from Florida also pressed on international free speech. So he questioned the executives on their allegiance to American values like free speech as they're pressured by foreign nations to suppress the voices of users outside the United States. And Senator Rubio said, "Your company would not exist if not for the United States and the freedoms we have." And when asked about Facebook's commitment to free speech globally, Ms. Sandberg said, "We support these principles around the world." And she added that the company does not have servers in Vietnam and would apply those same principles to China. Now, with Twitter, which defines itself as a global town square, Mr. Rubio said he was concerned that the foreign governments could pressure the company to stifle free speech. And Mr. Dorsey responded by saying that the company regularly pushes back against nations like Turkey, which demands the site censor certain voices. And Dorsey said, "Oftentimes we've won, but that's not always the case. We would like to fight freely and see everything." Now, Senator Rubio had strong words for Google, saying that the company's decision to miss the hearing may be because they are arrogant or because its executives wanted to dodge questions over a recent report of a consumer watchdog group posing as a Russian troll farm that tried to buy ads on Google. So Ms. Sandberg and Mr. Dorsey's opening statements displayed their obvious differences. Now, Ms. Sandberg, who was born in Washington and spent years living there during her time in the Treasury Department, appeared confident in her opening remarks. Speaking clearly and with practiced pacing, she complimented the committee's previous work on election interference. Now, Mr. Dorsey, however, stumbled during his opening, forgetting to turn on his microphone and reading from a cell phone he held in his hand. He added he was also live tweeting his opening remarks through his Twitter account. And while Ms. Sandberg made consistent eye contact with the senators, Mr. Dorsey appeared to be reading from his phone between questions. So leaders of the Senate Intelligence Committee struck a more positive tone toward Facebook and Twitter at the start of the hearing, commending them for efforts they've taken in the past year to combat disinformation campaigns and foreign meddling on their platform. Now, committee chairman Richard Burr, a Republican of North Carolina, and vice chairman Mark Warner, a Democrat of Virginia, said the companies appear to take the problem seriously, but that they can't solve their problems alone. And Mr. Burr said in his opening remarks, "My instinct is to applaud the diligence of your security teams and credit you with taking the problem seriously, but I'm sure your success is the big story here." So Mr. Warner said Congress may need to act to help the companies combat foreign interference on their sites. And Mr. Warner said, "You've gotten better and I'm pleased to see you've begun to take action, but the Russians are getting better as well. They have become harder to track. Worse, now that the Russian playbook is out there, other adversaries like Iran have joined the fray." So also, it did not take long for accusations of political bias to come crashing to the door of the Senate hearing room Wednesday morning. Now, as senators delivered opening statements about the threats to Democratic elections, Alex Jones stood just beyond the hearing room doors, doing his best to crash the party. And Alex Jones said to the bank of cameras, "The real election meddling is by Facebook and Google and others that are shadow banning people. They are outright banning people, and they are blocking conservatives involved in their own First Amendment political speech." Now, Facebook and YouTube banned Mr. Jones and his site InfoWars from their platforms in early August, sending traffic to the website tumbling. Now, Jack Posobiec, who is an ally of Alex Jones, quickly stepped out from the crowd with a microphone in his hand to conduct his own interview before rolling cameras. He complained about being barred from testifying, and he claimed his words were repeatedly misinterpreted. He said, "Think about this in America. Think about this in America." And still, despite Alex Jones's best efforts, the social media executives and the sideshows they attracted were a clear second fiddle on Capitol Hill, where elsewhere senators had gathered for the second day of confirmation hearings for Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. Now, as you can imagine, senators did notice Google's empty seat. And Senator Richard Burr, the North Carolina Republican who is the committee chairman, opened the hearing by questioning whether Twitter was transparent enough about how it regulated its platform. And Senator Mark Warner, Democrat of Virginia, and the committee's vice chairman, asked whether technology companies were capable of solving the problems on their platforms themselves, or whether the government should step in and regulate them. Now, Mr. Burr and Mr. Warner both criticized Google for failing to send their chief executive to the hearing. And Mr. Warner said, "I'm deeply disappointed that Google, one of the most influential digital platforms in the world, chose not to send its own top corporate leadership to engage this committee." And a good comment over here on YouTube by Nate Skate. He said, "The thing about these big social media companies is that they have very relaxed rules at start to get traffic. Then when big, they boot them out if they don't like." So Ms. Sandberg and Mr. Dorsey arrived for the hearing nearly an hour before it was to start, and they were flanked by Facebook and Twitter staff members, including Brandon Borman, Twitter's Vice President of Communications, and Joe Kaplan, Facebook's Vice President of Global Public Policy. So the executives waited in the Senate anteroom until the hearing began at 9:30 a.m. and the committee had set out 3 chairs, including one for Larry Page, the chief executive of Google's parent company Alphabet, at the witness table. The chair for Mr. Page was expected to remain empty throughout the hearing. And I want to switch over and pull up some videos for you guys from the hearing today. So this first is Sheryl's opening statement, Sheryl Sandberg.
Chairman Burr, Vice Chairman Warner, and members of the Select Committee, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. My written testimony goes into more detail about the actions we're taking to prevent election interference on Facebook. But I wanted to start by explaining how seriously we take these issues and talk about some of the steps we're taking. Free and fair elections are the foundation of any democracy. As Americans, they are part of our national identity. And that's why it's incumbent upon all of us to do all we can to protect our democratic process. That includes Facebook. At its best, Facebook plays a positive role in our democracy, enabling representatives to connect with their constituents, reminding people to register and to vote, and giving people a place to freely express their opinions about the issues that matter to them. However, we've also seen what can happen when our service is abused. As a bipartisan report from this committee said, Russia used social media as part of, and I quote, a comprehensive and multifaceted campaign to sow discord, undermine democratic institutions, and interfere in U.S. elections and those of our allies. We were too slow to spot this and too slow to act. That is on us. This interference was completely unacceptable. It violated the values of our company and of the country we love.
So I can only show you guys a little bit of that because of copyright, but we are going to switch over and I'll show you Jack Dorsey's opening statement. That was from CNBC, and this is from C-SPAN.
Thank you, Chairman Walden, Ranking Member Pallone, and the committee for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Twitter to the American people. I look forward to our conversation about our commitment to impartiality, to transparency, and to accountability. If it's okay with all of you, I'd like to read you something I personally wrote as I thought about these issues. I'm also going to tweet it out right now. I want to start by making something very clear. We don't consider political viewpoints, perspectives, or party affiliation in any of our policies or enforcement decisions. Period. Impartiality is our guiding principle. Let me explain why. We believe many people use Twitter as a digital public square. They gather from all around the world to see what's happening and have a conversation about what they see. Twitter cannot rightly serve as a public square if it's constructed around the personal opinions of its makers. We believe a key driver of a thriving public square is the fundamental human right of freedom of opinion and expression. Our early and strong defense of open and free exchange has enabled Twitter to be the platform for activists, marginalized communities, whistleblowers, journalists, governments, and the most influential people around the world. Twitter will always default to open and free exchange. A default to free expression left unchecked can generate risks and dangers for people. It's important Twitter distinguishes between people's opinions and their behaviors. and disarms behavior intending to silence another person or adversely interfere with their universal human rights. We build our policies and rules with a principle of impartiality, objective criteria, rather than on the basis of bias, prejudice, or preferring the benefit to one person over another for improper reasons. If we learn we failed to create impartial outcomes, we immediately work to fix. In the spirit of accountability and transparency, recently we failed our intended impartiality. Our algorithms were unfairly filtering 600,000 accounts, including some members of Congress, from our search autocomplete and latest results. We fixed it, but how did it happen? Our technology was using a decision-making criteria that considers the behavior of people following these accounts. We decided that wasn't fair, and we corrected it. We'll always improve our technology and algorithms to drive healthier usage and measure the impartiality of those outcomes. Bias in algorithms is an important topic. Our responsibility is to understand, measure, and reduce accidental bias due to factors such as the quality of the data used to train our algorithms. This is an extremely complex challenge facing everyone applying artificial intelligence. For our part, machine learning teams at Twitter are experimenting with these techniques and developing roadmaps to ensure present and future machine learning models uphold a high standard when it comes to algorithmic fairness. It's an important step towards ensuring impartiality. Looking at the data, we analyzed tweets sent by all members of the House and Senate and found no statistically significant difference between the number of times a tweet by a Democrat is viewed versus a Republican, even after all of our ranking and filtering of tweets has been applied. Also, there's a distinction we need to make clear.
So unfortunately, I can't show you the whole thing, but very interesting. You heard him say 600,000 accounts were being kind of buried down in the search results, and now that is fixed. Now, I'm assuming that that includes many conservative voices, and I know you guys have seen that a lot on Twitter as well. If you were ever shadow banned by Twitter and or Facebook, please let me know. We would love to hear your story over in the comments here on YouTube. Let us know, or send it to me on Twitter at AlyssaRSBN, and I will share it with everyone. So also wanted to go through with you guys kind of a timeline of how today went. And this is from the Independent in UK. So 5 months after Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg appeared before Congress, the U.S. government once again invited tech executives to a series of high-profile hearings. Now, Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg and Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey first faced the Senate Select Intelligence Committee before Mr. Dorsey was questioned on his own by the House Energy and Commerce Committee. Now, notably absent from the proceedings was Google after the firm failed to send a senior executive to Washington, and in place of a Google representative, the Senate committee left an empty chair. So 10 hours ago, it read, with 2.5 hours to go until Sheryl Sandberg follows in the footsteps of her boss, here's a reminder of how Mark Zuckerberg's hearing went in April. So after navigating nearly 5 hours of questions from 44 U.S. senators on Tuesday about the abuse of citizens' data, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg has done it all again on Wednesday. Once again, he was attacked on a range of fronts, as well as the company's failure to protect its users' data. Politicians question the site's perceived bias against conservative voices in its use for selling illegal materials like drugs. So both Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey and Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg have already prepared statements to read at the opening of their hearings. So in her 10-page testimony, Sandberg admits Facebook's past mistakes, but says the company is making efforts to address the issue of election interference on its platform. And it was expected that she would say, "We were too slow to spot this and too slow to act. That's on us. This interference was completely unacceptable. It violated the values of our company and the country we love." So then 8 hours ago, for his part, Jack Dorsey will argue in his opening statement that Twitter does not use political ideology to make any decisions, which he did. Now, Twitter has long tried to position itself as a platform that encourages free speech. However, it has struggled to strike the right balance when it comes to hate speech. Now, according to a recent report in the Wall Street Journal, Dorsey personally intervened in order to reinstate the account of far-right firebrand Alex Jones. So I'm going to share with you guys the opening to Twitter that Jack Dorsey prepared his statement. He said, "Thank you for the opportunity to appear before the committee today so I may speak to you and the American people. Twitter's purpose is to serve the public conversation. We are an American company that serves our global audience by focusing on the people who use our service, and we put them first in every step we take. Twitter is used as a global town square where people from around the world come together in an open and free exchange of ideas. We must be a trusted and healthy place that supports free and open discussion." Now, Twitter has publicly committed to improving the collective health, openness, and civility of public conversation on our platform. And this is still his statement. "Twitter's health is measured by how we help encourage more healthy debate, conversations, and critical thinking. Conversely, abuse, malicious automation, and manipulation detracts from the health of our platform. We are committed to hold ourselves publicly accountable towards progress of our health initiative." And he went on to say, "Today, I hope my testimony before the committee will demonstrate the challenges that we're tackling as a global platform. Twitter is approaching these challenges with a simple question: how do we earn more trust from the people using our service? We know the way to earn more trust around how we make decisions on our platform is to be as transparent as possible. We want to communicate how our platform works in a clear and straightforward way." Now, 8 hours ago, notably absent from today's proceedings was a representative of Google. And besides the Twitter and Facebook execs was an empty chair, symbolizing the fact that the tech giant didn't deem it necessary to send a senior figure. Instead, Google offered to send its top lawyer, Kent Walker, but the Senate Intelligence Committee declined. They wanted someone more involved with decision-making. So Walter compiled written testimony for the occasion, and even if he doesn't get the chance to deliver it verbally himself, he did publish it in a blog post. So 8 hours ago, the hearings starting with some words by Chairman Richard Burr about the recently passed Senator John McCain. And McCain's place at the hearing is marked with a single white rose on a black cloth. And Chairman Burr says he will be dearly missed. So 7 hours ago, Chairman Burr says in his opening remarks that business as usual for these tech firms is not good enough. And he said, we've identified the problem, now we've got to find a solution. And he also added a jibe at Google for failing to send the right senior executive. And his sentiments were echoed by Vice Chairman Mark Warner, who takes over from Burr. And he says he is deeply disappointed in Google for not taking the issues being discussed today seriously enough. And here is a picture of when Alex Jones arrived. It says Alex Jones just showed up as the social media Senate Intel hearing is about to start. And you can see just how many reporters and cameramen wanted to get an interview with him. So he is called a far-right conspiracy theorist. He's been the subject of a lot of debate surrounding free speech on the social media platforms, which saw him removed and then reinstated to Twitter earlier this month. Now, again, looking at this timeline, 7 hours ago, it says, meanwhile, inside the hearing, Facebook COO describes the situation as an arms race between her company and nefarious actors. And Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey, when he delivered his opening statement, he live tweeted it out. And I will show you guys a picture of those tweets real quick. This one I already shared with you in the opening statement, but also he tweeted out, I'm someone of very few words and typically pretty shy, and I realize how important it is to speak up now. If it's okay with all of you, I'd like to read you something I personally wrote as I considered these issues. I'll also tweet this out now. And here's a picture of him. You can see tweeting out his opening remarks. So the pattern of questions echo those faced by Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg back in April, and many of them are technical questions about the platforms, demonstrating some of the senators' lack of fundamental understanding of how these companies work. And Vice Chairman Warner blames Facebook for a lack of transparency when it comes to what it's doing with people's data and why. He says most users are in the dark. And Alex Jones was spectating from the front row. So 6 hours ago, both Dorsey and Sandberg seem unperturbed by the presence of the InfoWars host. And Sandberg responds to a question by Senator Martin Heinrich by saying Facebook is getting smarter at detecting and preventing threats to elections. Now, Dorsey echoes her words, detailing AI tools to recognize patterns of behavior that allow people to artificially amplify information. So on the topic of so-called fake news, Sandberg says finding the line between what is hate speech and what is misinformation is very, very difficult. And then soon after she said that, the hearing took a recess, and a live video of Alex Jones was shared on social media. It says he's prowling the corridors behind the hearing and looks and sounds very purposeful, though it's still not clear exactly what his purpose is. And he said, "I'm here to face my accusers." Now again, 6 hours ago, the conspiracy theorist just managed to corner a senator, though the poor quality of the video stream makes it difficult to determine which one. And his words were clear: "Stop violating the First Amendment. Shame on you, you un-American tyrant." And in front of the camera, Alex Jones said, "Beep, beep, beep, beep. I'm a Russian bot. Beep, 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 beep," in a bizarre performance. And he was then ranting about how Senator Rubio is probably attracted to him. He said he likes married men. And then the hearing started up again. It says, but Jones is still outside doing his best impression of a robot. And Alex Jones said he was there to speak to Jack Dorsey, but he had not yet been able to corner the Twitter boss. And he's now heading back into the Senate hearing, keeping the Twitter stream rolling. So coincidentally, Dorsey, the man whose platform is actually enabling this ridiculous live stream, is speaking as Jones enters. So finally, the Jones live stream is shut down after whoever was filming was kicked out of the Senate hearing. And this hearing was not good for Twitter's business, with its stock tanking since the hearing began. And I'll show you guys a picture of that stock. You can see, I'm going to pull it up right here, just the sharp decline there. It's down 5.14%. and 1.79 points. And you can see how the Facebook stock price fell as well, 1.62 points. Not as severe as Twitter. So 6 hours ago, Senator Angus King raises the issue of deep fakes, which Sandberg says is a serious concern for Facebook. As with most problems faced by the social network, the COO says a combination of AI and human oversight is the key to tackling it. So if you're not familiar with deep fakes, they're actually video clips that swap the subject's face with another person. And they're creeping their way into news clips that are now shared across social media. And then it says, imagine what such technology could do to the spread of misinformation online, like fake news, but supercharged. So then Senator Joe Manchin moves the conversation onto the issue of illegal drugs being advertised and sold on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, the Facebook-owned photo-sharing platform, which is done through the sharing of hashtags by dealers for prospective buyers to find products in their local area. And he said, to what extent do you feel responsible for drug overdose deaths that are facilitated through your platforms? And there was a silence as neither Sandberg nor Dorsey wanted to respond to this. So eventually Sandberg took the lead and says it is prohibited by Facebook, which Dorsey once again echoes. And Senator Manchin isn't content with this response, saying the question he was asked, do y'all feel responsible? And he proposes new laws to put the legal burden on the companies in the same way as it is with human trafficking. So committee members repeatedly raised the prospect of increased regulation of technology firms, including Facebook, Twitter, and Google. And Google's absence has consistently been noted throughout this hearing, and it's safe to say the tech giant is not very popular on Capitol Hill right now. And also just found a take from Caitlin Morrison on the independent.co.uk. Why would Google turn up to the Senate hearing? Silicon Valley plays by its own rules. And she goes on to say, in the latest example of a tech giant squaring up to the government, Google turned down an invitation to appear before the Senate Intelligence Committee in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday, where the topics for discussion included election meddling and security. And the firm's initial offer to send along Chief Legal Officer Kent Walker was countered with a request from the committee that a more senior representative for the group attend, such as the Chief Executive Sundar Pichai or Larry Page, CEO of Google's parent company Alphabet. However, in the end, the company decided against appearing at all, choosing instead to publish its testimony online ahead of the hearing. So this is not the first time a tech giant has snubbed politicians. Earlier this year, the UK's Digital, Culture, Media and Sport Committee summoned Facebook boss Mark Zuckerberg to give evidence in an inquiry into the Cambridge Analytica data breach. Now, a few days later, Zuckerberg said thanks, but no thanks, and announced that another Facebook exec would be sent in his place. So the social media tycoon rarely speaks publicly about his company's perceived findings, which is understandable. Nobody likes to admit their mistakes. But he is also rarely compelled to speak about problems within the organization or with its products. So he might be asked, and he usually says, no, that's it. So it's not terribly surprising when his Silicon Valley peers follow the same course of action. And the Facebook founder eventually did make an appearance at a Senate hearing on the same topic. MPs wanted to question him about, and what a wasted opportunity it was. Several senators on the questioning panel seemingly had little to no idea of how the company operated or even what it was when one of them asked Zuckerberg if Facebook friends were really friends. So displays like this arguably make politicians complicit in the tech industry's apparent disregard for government and regulators on two levels. Firstly, nothing useful comes from seeing tech bosses deftly deal with soft questions from investigators who don't have the expertise to know when they're being fobbed off with similar soft answers. Secondly, it gives these titans of the industry a pass if they're asked to answer questions at any point in the future. If nothing came of an earlier inquisition, what's the point in doing it all over again? So it's little wonder that tech companies think they're above complying with government requests. Of course, this doesn't apply to the entire sector. Uber's new chief executive, Dara Khosrowshahi, stands out as a Silicon Valley boss who is eager to show that his company is happy to work with the authorities and face up to past mistakes. However, Uber's new chief executive and his more obliging management style were not only employed after Uber had reached crisis point, and Uber provides a service for which regulation was already in place. It's a tech company, but taxis have been around a lot longer than the internet. So for the likes of Google and Facebook, there were no rules to abide by when they were launched, and policymakers have been really playing catch up ever since. Now, the disregard tech firms show for politicians trying to find a way to legislate for the internet age is born of years of having free reign over how their businesses operated. And for Mark TR that just asked when the Trump rally is, it is tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we will be bringing you coverage all day long. So the wider, more damaging repercussions of this unfettered existence can be clearly seen in the recent goings-ons at Tesla, where Chief Executive Elon Musk incurred the wrath of the Securities and Exchange Commission by tweeting plans to take the electronic car maker private. Now, it's not out of character for Musk to behave outside the norms of a typical CEO, refusing to answer boring questions about financials, throwing accusations at divers. But he surely has found it both easier and perhaps more tempting to do so because the tech industry in general sees itself as being a world apart. So Silicon Valley has made its own rules, and they're the only ones it cares to follow. So 5 hours ago, Charlie Burt said in his closing statements, other states are now using the Russian playbook. He said, how many copycats will we see before we take this seriously? So as the hearing is wrapped up, Alex Jones was lurking outside waiting to pounce on Jack Dorsey. He live streamed the whole thing on Twitter. So the InfoWars team is covering every door outside the Senate hearing, waiting for Dorsey's emergence. And Jones said, senators are slinking out. Now they have these hearings demonizing me. I'm going to show up. And Jones wanted to make sure his team was streaming. He asked them if they were streaming to the person behind the camera. So kind of a storyline for you of what happened next. I'm just going to read it to you. Jones is on the move, no running, someone says. As he steamrolls his way down the corridor, he's outside, someone else says. But as they emerge into the daylight, there's still no sign of Dorsey. Now, Senate security is not letting Jones back in. His frustration is mounting. He's circling the security area, barking about a bait and switch. And the Twitter live stream is being very flaky. Could someone at Dorsey's company be pulling some strings? So Alex Jones is still live streaming, but it doesn't look like he'll get a chance to speak to the Twitter boss. And Dorsey's second session is still to come. So then Senator Angus King asked Dorsey about political censorship, and this is a big issue lately. Both conservatives and liberals have complained that they are being censored for expressing their political views. Now I am going to show you a clip. This is from Fox Business Network, and this is Senator Angus King.
I'd hate to see your platforms become political in the sense that you're censoring one side or the other of any given debate. Mr. Dorsey?
So, yeah, we absolutely agree. We you know, as we are building a digital public square, we do believe expectations follow that, and that is a default to freedom of expression and opinion. And we need to understand when that default interferes with other fundamental human rights, such as physical security or privacy, and what the adverse impact on those fundamental human rights are. And I do believe that context does matter in this case. We had a case of voter suppression around 2016 that was tweeted out, and we are happy to say that organically, the number of impressions that were calling it out as fake were 8 times that of the reach of the original tweet. That's not to say that we can rely on that, but asking the question how we make that more possible and how we do it at velocity is the right one to ask.
So it then goes on to say, we noted before that Google's absence from the hearing did not go unnoticed. Here are Mark Warner's comments on the subject, which are less than glowing. So going to show you his comments real quick.
I'd say, though, I'm deeply disappointed that Google, one of the most influential digital platforms in the world, chose not to send its own top corporate leadership to engage this committee. Because I know our members have a series of difficult questions about structural vulnerabilities on a number of Google's platforms that we need answers for.
And first, let me thank you both for being here, and also to express my outrage that your counterpart at Google is not at the table as well.
Good morning, and to the invisible witness, good morning to you.
Well, it's been mentioned several times, and I think appropriately so, Google is not here today, but the two of you are. And
I want to commend both of you for your appearance here today for what was no doubt going to be some uncomfortable questions, and I want to commend your companies for making it available. I wish I could say the same about Google.
Wow, so you could see lots of senators were very frustrated that Google did not show up. You could see the empty chair with the Google sign. So Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg said today that hate speech is not allowed on our platform. But, as we've reported before, the company's internal guidelines do allow for white nationalists to organize on the site. So still going through the timeline, 4 hours ago, Jack Dorsey is set to appear shortly before the House Energy and Commerce Committee. Chair Greg Walden is starting us out by talking about the difficulty of moderating such a huge platform. He says the committee wants to better understand when and why users are suspended or banned and what role algorithms have in the process. So then Congressman Frank Pallone is praising Twitter for giving voice to the otherwise voiceless. But he also says online bullying is a problem and that users need to be better protected from it. So he also called out Alex Jones by name while talking about disinformation on the platform, saying that more needs to be done to stop false information from spreading. And also, he took shots at President Trump for all the insults he's tweeted out over the years. He called it behavior that would not be tolerated from a child. So Mr. Dorsey then started talking. He discussed bias in algorithms, how the company has made missteps in using them before, and he says improving these algorithms is an important step towards ensuring impartiality. So then 4 hours ago, still, Mr. Walden wants to know if it's possible for bots to game the system and silence some voices. And Mr. Dorsey says it's possible, and that's why Twitter doesn't just use one signal when determining whether to block or rank down a user. So Mr. Pallone wants to know how many content moderators Twitter employs in the US, how much they're paid, and what kind of training they get. Now, Mr. Dorsey refuses to give specifics on this right now, but says the company needs to do a better job of extending protections to private users, not just celebrities. And Mr. Dorsey admits that if most people sat down in front of Twitter's rules today with a cup of coffee, they probably wouldn't be able to understand them. He said, I think there's a lot of confusion around our rules and also our enforcement, and we need to fix that. And Congressman Diana DeJette was asking about the harassment of women on Twitter 3 hours ago. She wanted to know if Twitter has data about harassment based on gender and sexual orientation on its platform. So Mr. Dorsey says he's planning to work on a transparency report this year to make some of this data public. And Mr. Dorsey says Twitter was in compliance with the GDPR even before the legislation was passed. He said, we do believe that privacy is a fundamental human right. And he added they're working to give users more control over their data. So there was a question about how a doctored picture of Meghan McCain, the daughter of late Senator John McCain, that was circulated on Twitter over the weekend. And it took hours for the company to take the picture down. Mr. Dorsey says he hasn't apologized personally to the McCain family, but he plans to. So also here's an entertaining moment from earlier in the hearing.
Thank you. Now turn to Mr. Upton, former chairman of the committee, for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Dorsey, I think it's fair to say that even looking at my Twitter feed, that there are some fairly ugly things on Twitter that come every now and then. And my name is Fred Upton, and I got to bet that my initials are probably used more than just about any other. Might even think that it's bipartisan on both sides of the aisle. But I would like to see civility brought back into the public discourse.
So you can see he is calling for civility to be brought back into the public discourse. And 3 hours ago, Congressman Joe Barton started his questioning, and he says to Dorsey, you don't look like what a Twitter CEO should look like. And Dorsey shoots back, my mom would agree with you. Now, Barton kept asking whether Twitter discriminates against conservatives, asking different variations on the same question. But Mr. Dorsey's answer was pretty much the same every time he said no. Now, 3 hours ago, it was heard that someone is screaming in the hearing room, though it's difficult to hear what she's saying, and she's been escorted out by security. Now, Mr. Dorsey is being asked about whether Twitter will be deleting all the accounts linked to a foreign adversary, and he says it's something they're getting better at, but it's not a challenge that has an endpoint. He says the company currently identifies 8 to 10 million suspicious accounts every week and challenges them to see if they're bots or bad actors. So then 3 years ago, Laura Loomer entered the picture, and you can hear her shouting out that Jack is a liar. And then you can see Representative Long's very interesting, creative, and kind of funny response. So I know that was kind of low, sorry about that, but she was screaming out to be recognized, and she said, "We are not Russian bots, stop shadow banning us." And then Representative Long started doing the calling of an auctioneer, and as soon as she left, everyone bursted out laughing. So then 3 hours ago, back on the question of the doctored photo of Meghan McCain, Mr. Dorsey says the tweet was up for 5 hours and was definitely a violation of Twitter's policies. And he said they were slower to respond to this tweet because the insult was contained in the image and not the text tweet itself. But he also notes that the burden usually forms on the victim to report this kind of abuse, and that needs to change. So then 2 hours ago, Congressman Jerry McNerney gets to the heart of what many Democrats are saying about this hearing, calling it a desperate effort to rally the Republican base before the November elections. And several Democrats have made similar points before him, suggesting this is a way for Republicans to distract from the ongoing investigations into the president. And still 2 hours ago, that concluded the coverage. So that's a timeline. And I want to find more information about this for you guys, see if Dorsey tweeted anything else out about it. Wow, it looks like he tweeted out his entire opening statement. So 8 hours ago, he said, "Thank you, Chairman Burr, Vice Chairman Warner, and the committee for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Twitter to the American people. I look forward to our conversation about the work we're doing to help protect the integrity of U.S. elections and elections around the world." And this one I already shared with you guys. He said, "I'm someone of very few words and typically pretty shy, and I realize how important it is to speak up now. If it's okay with all of you, I'd like to read something I personally wrote as I consider these issues." I'll also tweet this out now. He said, "First, I wanted to step back and share our view of Twitter's role in the world. We believe many people use Twitter as a digital public square. They gather from all around the world to see what's happening, and they have a conversation about what they see." He then went on to say, "In any public space, you'll find inspired ideas and you'll find lies and deception. People who want to help others and unify, and people who want to hurt others and themselves and divide. What separates a physical and digital public space is greater accessibility and velocity." And then he said, "We're extremely proud of helping to increase the accessibility and velocity of a simple, free, and open exchange. We believe people will learn faster by being exposed to a wide range of opinions and ideas, and it helps to make our nation and the world feel a little bit smaller." He said, "We aren't proud of how that free and open exchange has been weaponized and used to distract and divide people and our nation. We found ourselves unprepared and ill-equipped for the immensity of the problems we've acknowledged." He said, "Abuse, harassment, troll armies, propaganda through bots and human coordination, misinformation campaigns, and divisive filter bubbles, that's not a healthy public square. Worse, a relatively small number of bad faith actors were able to game Twitter to have an outsized impact." He said, "Our interests are aligned with the American people and this committee. If we don't find scalable solutions to the problems we're now seeing, we lose our business and we continue to threaten the original privilege and liberty we were given to create Twitter in the first place." He said, "We weren't expecting any of this when we created Twitter over 12 years ago. We acknowledge this real-world negative consequences of what happened, and we take full responsibility to fix it. We can't do this alone, and that's why this conversation is so important and why I'm here." He said, "We've made significant progress recently on tactical solutions like identification of many forms of manipulation, intending to artificially amplify information, more transparency around who buys ads and how they are targeted, and challenging suspicious logins and account creation." He then said, "We've seen positive results from our work. We're now removing over 200% more accounts from violating our policies. We're identifying and challenging 8 to 10 million suspicious accounts every week, and we're thwarting over 500,000 accounts from logging into Twitter every day." And going on to the end of that, he said, "What made it possible was the fact that I was born into a nation built by the people for the benefit of the people, where I work hard to make something happen which was bigger than me. I treasure that and will do everything in my power to protect it from harm. Thank you." And I think that is going to wrap up the recap of those Senate hearings today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Really appreciate you. I'm going to take some time to prepare for my nightly news broadcast, my nightly news recap, so make sure to tune in at 8 p.m. Central Time for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then after that, we will have our pre-rally stream for you guys of the team in Montana. So stay tuned for that. Really excited to share it with you guys. We've got a lot going on at RSBN today and so glad to bring it all to you. And I hope that you guys have a good evening, but I will see you in just an hour and a half, so don't go anywhere. And once again, for Right Side Broadcasting Network, I'm Melissa Ash.